So to start off, Diane, can you just tell us who you are, where you're located, and how you work with the Sierra Club?
Well, sure. My name is Diane Cain, and I'm located in Hickston, Wisconsin, which is near Black River Falls. I belong to the Wildlife Committee of the Sierra Club, and I'm so grateful to be on it because it allows me to give a voice for my passion, which is wolves. I'm passionate about them because I've met them. I've exchanged gazes with them on my farm. I live near the Central Forest Zone, so they're around here. And in fact, in a way, it may sound odd, but I feel like I'm their messenger. And so this gives me a platform to do so. Um, so thank you for having me.
Great. Thanks so much for being here, Diane. So first, can you just tell us what's the big deal with wolves? Why is there so much focus on gray wolves? What's so special about them compared to other wildlife?
Well, I have one sentence, and I want to embellish upon this sentence, but they're iconic, they're revered, they're reviled, and they're misunderstood. They're iconic because they symbolize the wild and the free. They're revered. They're revered amongst the Ojibwe tribes. They're called Ma'ingan or brothers, and they're part of the creation story. Unfortunately, they're reviled. It goes back to folklore, you know, the Little Red Riding books, and even Frozen, featuring these drooling wolves chasing the main characters. I had to kind of, my granddaughters even thought wolves were bad. Of course, I immediately nixed that notion, but, and they're misunderstood. They're 99.8% genetic match to our dogs. They're very family oriented. They raise their pups until their breeding age of 18 to 2 months. Only the alpha male and female breed in a pack. 70% of wolves die in the first year. Where I live, they only have a life expectancy of surprisingly 2.2 years. 25% of adults and yearling wolves die per year. A third of adult wolves die from starvation, and unfortunately poachers kill 9 to 19%. They die of starvation, mange, canine parvovirus, canine distemper, heartworm, limes, injuries from prey, territory disputes, and motor vehicle accidents. So no wonder they're not a long-lived animal. They're only successful in their hunts 3 to 14% of the time, and they really pose no threat to humans. They're special because of the reasons that you just put up on your display there, that they help with biodiversity. They do mate for life. They have a strong sense of protection for their families. They're cool creatures.
Great. And so now I'm sure many more are very concerned about the wolves. Can you just give us an overview of what's been happening? If you've been trying to follow this in the news, you were probably really confused because there was court cases, there were decisions, it all happened really, really fast. Can you give us an overview of what's been going on?
I will. You know, I do have to go back here to 1835 to 1855, going back a little in time. And that's when edible wildlife became extinct in Wisconsin because they were killed for many reasons, sport, market hunting. And in fact, they even killed beavers. They were extinct by 1914 and wolves were dependent on that. So then wolves turned to settlers' livestock because they had to have something to eat. And then along came Teddy Roosevelt that declared the wolf a beast of waste and destruction and called for its eradication. That was just the beginning of the role politics has and now is still playing in the lives of wolves. By 1839, their wolf bounty happened until 1957. They were gone from Wisconsin till about the 1970s, and then they started kind of wander in from into their own from northern Minnesota, and they ended up here in Wisconsin and Michigan. They were placed under the endangered species protections in 1974, and their populations grew to 250 in 1999. And people got really nervous about them. They thought that there was only there's never been more than less than 1% of livestock depredation. But they thought wolves at 250 would take over their yards, they eat their livestock and their babies or whatever they think they eat. And they didn't really realize that wolves are shy and they try to avoid humans and they generally stay in forested areas. So they decided in 1999 the population quota should be 350 or less. And at that time, in 1999, there were 23,000 small dairy farms, and now there's only 7,000. So things have changed a lot. So in 2011, wolves were removed from the Endangered Species Act, and then just 6 days later, Act 169 was passed. And that was the act that allowed wolf hunting by hounding, scented traps, snaring, guns, night hunting, bow and arrow. And at that time, it resulted in 518 wolves killed from 2012 to 2014. So why does all that matter to us? Well, it's because then that same act is what was used now for this February hunt, for those ways of killing wolves. So in 2012, 75% of the wolves were killed were wolf pups. In 2014, 80% killed were trapped. And then in 2013, they opened up our 60,570 acres of state parks and trails to hunting and trapping 7 months of the year. So again, a little less space for the wolves to be safely. December 2014, a federal judge relisted wolves in the Great Lakes and Wyoming because there wasn't a 5-year monitoring program followed. And then another thing, which you would think wouldn't affect wolves, but it really did. In 2014, Class B licenses were removed, allowing bear hunters to train their unlicensed hounds on bears. And they released them in known wolf territory beginning July 1st. So what that meant to wolves were hounds from all over the country converge on the North Woods. This is basically a bit lawless there. They start baiting April 15th. And so then the wolves don't really like it because it's in their territory. Still, they defend their pups and their territory. And unfortunately, hounds get killed. And also then in 2017, there was an Assembly Bill 712 that tried to make wolf poaching a wink and a nod by DNR, by law enforcement. Just, if you see a wolf poach, just ignore it. Fortunately, that law did not get passed, and then the DNR staff was cut by Science Bureau, including the Science Bureau. And so what all of that meant, and what that means to our wolves now, is that it allowed an anti-wolf sentiment that resulted in the reinforcement of this mindset, which devalued wolves and legitimized those who harbored ill will against wolves. So that is all going, that's kind of the background story of this whole thing. So November 3rd, 2020, wolves were removed again from the Endangered Species Act. And January 4th, 2021, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service returned wolves to state management in the Great Lakes. So per Act 169, the one we talked about back a few sentences ago, the DNR prepared for a hunt in November of 2021 using that same Act 169 criteria. But the Wisconsin NRB and some legislators felt like a hunt should begin in February, even though it's wolf breeding season. So there were 1,400 public comments received in 48 hours against this hunt. About 40 people testified before the NRB, including many from the Ojibwe tribes. So the NRB decided, well, they were going to hold off till November. We thought, oh, good. But then there was a lawsuit filed on behalf of a group called Hunter Nation for the right to have a February hunt. So state of Wisconsin attorneys filed an appeal, but the appeal was denied for lack of jurisdiction, and the appeal for its stay was dismissed as moot. So that's kind of how we got to where we were in February.
Wow. So that's a lot. So now we're here. Can you talk a little bit about what Sierra Club's position is about any upcoming hunts? I know there's a lot of confusion out there, and groups are labeling our position one thing or another. So set the record straight, Diane. Can you tell us what Sierra Club's position is about any future wolf hunts?
Well, their management goal, I have to start with, is to conserve and protect the gray wolf population. And so that's of good government.
Uh-oh, Diane's freezing for me. Is she freezing for others?
Removing the endangered species management plan which has a goal of 350 wolves, which is completely outdated, and to replace it with the formation of a new conservation biology type study committee. A lot of things need to rework. 1999 is a long time. And so that's their goal, is to rework this. Because, you know, I guess with this wolf hunt, 46% of the wolves were female and many likely pregnant, and 54% of the males were killed. Well, you think, well, that won't bother the population, but it really does, because the ability of because they care for the pups together, the ability of a bred female to care for pups on her own is probably impossible. So this hunt might have had historic detrimental effects on the wolf population. 86% of the wolves were killed by hunters with packs of 6 trailing hounds, and 9% killed by predator calls or bait, and 5% killed by trappers. And if you remember the numbers I gave you earlier from earlier hunters, this is a complete deviation from earlier hunts, where 86% of the hounds, you know, of the wolves killed by hounds. So it was pretty clear that technology, hounds, snowmobiles, and an unprecedented tactical assault converged against these unsuspecting wolves, which really was a dire thing. And hopefully, and the Sierra Club is going to be very active in working to get that management goal attained, get that back to where it should be. So, and I think they will.
Absolutely, especially with everybody's generous support today to help us make that happen. Thank you so much for joining us, Diane, and for all of the work that you do.
Thank you for having me. Okay. Yeah.